Steel Curtain Network.
Touchdown! Touchdown para Calvin Austin! El Monte Washington es arma. ¿Quién más? ¿Quién más? DJ Watt!
All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to another Steelers postgame show. And TJ Watt does step up in a big way. We've been waiting for that. Been waiting for a Steelers win. Hell, we've been waiting for a Steelers game. It feels like forever since they last played, but the Steelers are victorious 44-38. I really hope Bryan Davis got that score correct before he gets lambasted by the live chat. Nonetheless, I'm here with Dave Schofield and Bryan Davis. Dave, what's going on?
I needed that one today. I did. Happy to be here with the win.
Absolutely. And Bryan, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hope you took the over. Oh, wait. Joey Porter just got flagged again. Sorry. But I hope you took the over.
I took the over, but I was not expecting that.
No.
44-38. That's the first time the Steelers have scored more than or scored that many points since 2018 when they put up over 50 against the Carolina Panthers. So it's been a while, but the Steelers find a way to do it. Let's start the show like we always do with some knee-jerk reactions. Dave, I'll start with you.
Well, I'll throw out another number for you there. This was the first time the Steelers were victorious in a game that combined for at least 82 points since 2014 when they beat the Indianapolis Colts 51-34. So wow. I'll put that one out there. They had two since then, but unfortunately both of them were losses and both were in the postseason. But this isn't usually how the Steelers – usually when the Steelers win a high-scoring game, it's because they're only scoring a bunch of points because they have to. This one, I mean, they did have to in order to win, but I think they knew it coming in that they really had to put the points on the board, and they did. And they did. So, yes, they got a defensive score. They were pretty close to having two, which ended up turning into nothing. And it turned into their only punt of the day.
Yep.
Was a shoestring tackle away from maybe a pick six. And it started terrible. And it didn't start that terrible when you force a 3 and out, but offensively it started pretty bad. Although I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit, but
yes, we will.
For them to turn it around and just continue to do what they needed to do, that was a big one.
All right, Bryan, knee-jerk reactions.
I've got a lot to say about this game, and I'm going to start with this. Dave brought this up the other day that this could be a defining game for the rest of 2024, and I really think that it was. This feels really different to me. The Steelers team feels so much different. I know the way it started, there was a lot of stuff that felt like same old Steelers. There's Mike, but if you listen to Mike Tomlin's post-game press conference, he gives you a lot of answers in that. I love it. He said, look, we knew we were going to have to pass the ball. We knew what they were going to give us. So we decided to go ahead and take it. We knew against a Joe Burrow team that we were going to need every last one of those 44 points. So they needed to show. And a lot of people were saying the Steelers can't keep up with the high-powered offenses. This was a high-powered offense. They were able to not just keep up with them, they were able to win. So as far as defining, what does this define? As Mike Tomlin said, yeah, we still have a lot to clean up. It shows that they do have a lot to clean up, but they have a lot less to clean up that you think to go ahead and keep up with these teams. This is a team that could go ahead and go into a shootout if they have to. And we saw that with Russell Wilson. What a performance today from him. So there's so many things to show, but it was a team effort. When Najee went down a little bit, Cordell Patterson came in, looked really good. I liked what they were getting from them. It was spread out all along. We've got a lot of people to talk about in this game, but this is a team, not just a series of individuals like we've seen in the past.
All right. That does it for the post-game show. You guys wrapped it up. I will say this quickly.
Sorry.
I feel like the Steelers are built now, which we haven't been able to say for a while, to win multiple styles of games. It used to always be the same thing, right? The Steelers got to win those close, hard-fought defensive battles. Think back to 2 games ago, the 18-16 win over Baltimore. Ugly wins. However, they've now shown that if things get away from the defense, this offense is capable of putting up points. I think that's special. I think that's worth noting. We've got a lot of super chats flying in. I'm going to get these on the screen. Tom Muir, Tom Plays Games, gives us $9 as $1 per win. Can someone tape Joey Porter Jr.'s hands shut, please? Russ was cooking today, and they needed all of it. Here we go, Steelers. Here we go. Well, I mean, maybe if you tape his hands shut, it's not going to make him catch the ball any better. He definitely wears 24 well, considering the ball went right through his hands at the end of the game. But thank you for the tip. We appreciate it. Let's get Cass here. Gives us $9.99. Said, not sure what team I just watched, but I am a fat, sassy, and spoiled fan today. 44 points on the face. Absolutely.
I like that one.
Justin Gall gives us $49.99. Thank you very much for the tip. He said, big win, gentlemen. Discovered a lot about the Steelers today and Russell Wilson's rocket arm. Sharing the wealth with my 5-figure, 7-leg parlay win. Thanks for being awesome. Wow. 5-figure, 7-leg parlay win. Congratulations.
Love it. I want to know what he got. I mean, not the money. I want to know what picked.
The parlay was.
Yeah,
for sure. That's awesome. And thank you for the generous tip. We do appreciate it. Brandon Diaz gives us $1.99. Said the refs have an agenda versus both George Pickens and Joey Porter Jr. #win. I do think, and we'll get to George Pickens, that there is somewhat of a precedent set, and they've been probably told to watch him. And these officials, they have meetings, they talk, and they definitely are keying on certain players as they approach the upcoming game. It's not like they wake up on Sunday and don't know what game they have. We knew that Sean Hockley's crew was doing the Steelers Bengals all week. And I'm sure they looked at the Steelers and said, we need to watch 14. He does some post play antics. Just got to keep an eye on him. And it sometimes draws flags for sure. Let's get Heath Davis, $5. Zach Taylor looks like he needs help putting on a shirt because his back is too hairy. He said Cincy being bullies, targeting our smallest wide receiver with 30 hits. Calvin Austin III, who, by the way, was the only injured player listed by Mike Tomlin after the game, is being evaluated for a concussion. So he was questionable, then ruled out. So he's being evaluated. We're not sure if he's in the protocol or not. We'll find out on Tuesday. He took some vicious hits in this game, absolutely vicious hits. Some of them caught the ball and held on. I always tell my daughters when they're down watching the game with me, it's like sometimes it looks like he gets hit by a truck whenever he touches the football. It looks vicious, but still. All right, y'all ready for this? Let's get this cracking with the box scores. We always start with the offensive side of the ball. And we always start with the quarterback, Russell Wilson. What a game to remember here. 29 of 38. 29 of 38. That's an incredible number right there. 414 yards, 10.9 yard average, 3 touchdowns. He had the interception. Some would say it was questionable that there should have been a flag thrown on the defense, and which negated the play. Nonetheless, he does have an interception. Has 2 sacks for 126.4 rating. Dave, I'll let you start. What did you think about Russ?
Well, I'm going to ask a question first to see if I'm remembering correctly.
Sure.
Were both of his sacks where he went down on his own? I know one was where he slid for no gain.
Yes.
And the other one, I think, was down when they were taking the field goal at the end, which, I wanted to see him even just go for it on 4th, because to me, a field goal it was still a 2-score game. In that one, I really wanted to see them push it to a 3-score game again. But my goodness, Russell Wilson did everything that you asked him to do. He even came off the field gracefully on one of the biggest plays of the game. And my goodness, it worked well, because I think the Steelers on the previous possession set it up by handing it off to Jaylen Warren. So they knew that a handoff was just as, they did it last game as well for a touchdown, and that went well. But my goodness, did you have any doubt that if the Steelers needed the offense to do something, that they weren't going to be able to do it, even when they were constantly being down by a touchdown? I'm just like, especially, yes, I know the Bengals defense is not very good, relatively. But it just seemed like the Steelers could do almost whatever they wanted to, as long as they weren't shooting themselves in the foot offensively. Russell Wilson just came through big time and just led the team to what they needed to do in this case. It was a huge game for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And to answer your question, Dave, that you asked, no, I never would have had a doubt that they were going to move the ball. I mean, it just seemed like the Steelers were just up and down the field, whether it was a field goal or whether it was a touchdown. They were going to put points on the board every time they touched the ball. I mean, one punt, right? Corliss Waitman had one punt in the entire game. Yeah. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good evening. Brian, what do you think about Russ?
You set me up because that's exactly what I wanted to say about that to answer Dave's question first. And they shouldn't have had to punt there because that was a big screw up by George Pickens. And they were in a situation where they would have been on the 10 or 11 yard line. And that punt was because they were set back 15 yards and they were then in a situation where they were losing yardage.
I think you're getting confused. That wasn't the punt. That was the missed field goal.
I was getting confused. Yeah. Okay, scratch all that. That'll go out in editing. And
but no, I was going to bring that up too because you're exactly right, Brian. You know, they didn't start the second half the way they wanted to, and a lot of that was because of Pickens. And so, whether it was when they punted or not, you're still spot on.
All right, so I did get that mixed up. But anyways, let's talk about Russell Wilson. That was a spectacular game. And I think one of the most important things for me was how he was throwing bullets. My gosh, when Justin mentioned the rocket arm, my gosh, yes. It seemed like he was throwing lasers. And I loved exactly, I mean, I just feel comfortable even on a 3rd and 9 when Russell Wilson's the quarterback of this team. I feel so comfortable with him. And I feel like they have it. I feel like he's playing with class and grace. I love the stat line. I did not start him on my fantasy team today. I'm sorry. I'm not going to. Mahomes, you're fired. But as far as everything else goes, that was a leader out there. And he does things out there that makes you feel like this team is being led by a veteran. And guess what? They are being led by a veteran. They're being led by a Super Bowl champion. And that's sometimes the difference in January.
There are times, speaking of Russell Wilson, that I have to remind myself of who placed calls to Russell Wilson in the offseason to try and recruit him to Pittsburgh.
The defenders.
Yeah. Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick. And I'm sure that they probably had some conversations like, look, Russ, we can't do it all. They can't. They physically are unable to do everything. And that's been proven time and time again since the retirement of Ben Roethlisberger. And so they get Russ in. And I think there were all moments, especially the last few weeks. And this is why, Dave and I do the X Factor article. My X Factor was Russell Wilson. He had to prove it in this game. He's had a couple overs in the red zone. There's been some issues at times. And I thought he did a tremendous job, especially bouncing back from the adversity of the pick six. A lot of people would say that the officiating missed the call. I would be one of those people, by the way. And you know what? He didn't let it get to him. That's the veteran leadership that Brian was talking about. And so I look at it and say, the Steelers are in good hands. I also, before we move on, I thought that Arthur Smith called a fantastic football game. And then, Mike Tomlin alluded to the fact that they knew they were going to have to throw it. It was how they threw it. How many times first half did we see the running back slip through the middle of the line of scrimmage and turn around, and there's not a black jersey within 20 yards of him? Just check it down. Those are the easiest yards you can ever find. And then sometimes it's difficult for quarterbacks to just take those short little intermediate throws that turn into big gains. I thought Russell Wilson, it was the best game as a Steeler, and I think we could all both agree that there might have been more on the plate too. They could have left something out there. Dave, what do you want to say?
264 yards after the catch.
That's incredible. And that's a lot of those checkdowns and letting his guys make plays.
Which makes it a smart play.
Yeah, it
makes that such a smart play. If you can, get it to your receiver and let them move with the ball. There you go.
I mean, there was the whole drive where it was just nothing but Najee Harris, check down. He's gassed. Could barely get off.
All in the first half too. I think he had all his receptions in the first half.
Yeah,
and those ones to Cordero too. But when he has to go deep, it's easy because of those checkdowns.
Yeah. All right. Let's get a couple super chats here before we go any further. Wilson Pava gives us $21. He said $1 per non-losing season. Hey, I didn't say it at the top of the show. I didn't want to piss off all the people in the live chat, but the 9th win means another non-losing season for Mike Tomlin. And so, Wilson, thank you for bringing that up. He said, y'all are one of the best parts of being a Steeler fan. Jeff, your live tweets are on point. Oh, someone pays attention. Thank you. He said, it's nice to see us put Killer B numbers, a throwback game of sorts. Absolutely. Wilson, thank you for the tip. Appreciate it greatly. Justin Gall gives us $19.99. He said,
man, he keeps sharing.
I know, man. He's generous. 'Tis the season to be giving. He said, can we talk about the short passing game and the soft short middle? Are these designed first reads or checkdowns? I feel like this has been open all year. Thoughts? I think they kind of knew that the Bengals were going to do certain things in certain situations. And then when it plays out in front of you, and my daughters asked, why is Van Jefferson just running back and forth all the time? I said, they're trying to diagnose if it's man or zone, and then they're going to base the play off of that. So this is the old Coach KT Smith, you motion with intent, not motion just to motion like we saw in the Matt Canada era. So I want to switch gears, and I want to talk about the pass catchers here. That's where I want to go next, because this is incredible. The Steelers had 8 players, if I counted correctly, 8 receiving players that had at least one catch of 20 yards or more. I'll read them off to you. Ben Skoranek had a catch for 23. Calvin Austin III, a catch for 23. Cordero Patterson, a catch for 20. Van Jefferson, a huge third down catch for 43. Najee Harris had a catch for 25. Jalen Warren for 29. Pat Freiermuth for 25. And George Pickens for 36. Just incredible stuff. They end up having George Pickens lead the way with 74 yards, 3 catches, 6 targets. Pat Freiermuth, 6 catches, 68 yards. Good for him. 7 targets. That's what I want to see for Pat. And a bunch of other stuff. Dave, I'm sure you have some numbers here, first half, second half type stuff, but I'll let you talk about the receiving core because I thought they had a great game.
Well, I didn't even break it down into halves because I didn't know if I needed to. But I mean, you said that about all the players with at least 20 yards, with the 20-yard reception. Sorry, Michael Pruitt was just short with 18.
Yeah.
That's how close he was. And then the only other receiver that didn't was Darnell Washington with his one catch for 10 yards, which was a really big one at the time that he made it. It was the pass catchers. My goodness, they were taking care of business. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if Russ was intentional or if they specifically designed this with the offense. I think a lot of the reason that the checkdowns were working is because he could see them. They were giving him lanes, whether he was stepping through, stepping around, in order to see the check down to get the ball there, which made a huge difference. So I just wanted to say that because you would mention that with the checkdowns. But there is nothing about the wide receivers that I would say was disappointing outside of George Pickens and the things that were going on. The first one, he was lucky. It didn't cost the Steelers anything on that drive. The second one almost cost him an ejection and killed the Steelers' drive.
I thought he was going to get ejected.
Yeah,
I thought he was going to get ejected.
I had already put it in the game day thread. I'm like, this is an ejection. But when someone I don't know if you all saw, the reason it wasn't is because someone posted it on X. Gestures are limited to being towards players, the opposing sideline, the officials. There's nothing about it that says fans. And because he did it in the direction of the fans, that's what saved him. But why do something like that? I mean, and that's after he even punted the ball after his touchdown, which was surprising that they didn't do something about that. He had a very nice game otherwise, but my goodness, even if the Steelers settle for a field goal, you put that field goal closer. I don't know. It was pretty bad how quick they got in there to block that. But if you put it closer, maybe they can't get the block. And that's another 3 points, which would have been a multiple possession game at the end there as well. That could have been big. Luckily, it wasn't. You can't let it become something that will hurt you in games where it can be the difference of the game. So the Steelers did enough to overcome it. But other than that, I just felt like the receivers were doing their job and doing a very nice job and being there for their quarterback to let him have the game that he had.
All right, Brian, thoughts on the pass catchers?
Receivers were phenomenal. I really felt it. I love the way the ball is getting spread around. I tell you who I love. Ben Skoranek, Michael Pruitt. I love those dirty work guys. I love those blue-collar guys that are special team players, but when the Rams used Skoranek well, and a good offense is going to use a guy like Skoranek sparingly like that, but make it work. We all want to see Mike Williams get into it. I agree with everybody that you want to see him out there. Hopefully that will come with time. Hopefully that will come sooner rather than later. But the guys that were out there, Van Jefferson had a very big play today. That's if you're working with pieces of the puzzle instead of one big piece and you're done. And I keep on going back to the Antonio Brown days. It was Antonio Brown was cool. The rest were the gang. I mean, gosh, you had Kobe Hamilton and Eli Rogers in there. Now, the guys that you have here, you could spread it around and feel very comfortable about it. So George Pickens is still going to get his opportunities. Now, he's got to grow up. Mike Tomlin used the term grow up, I think 3 times in that one section on George. Look, I know he's emotional. I know Broderick Jones, God bless him. He's trying. I guess because of George, they were close, and he keeps going up to him. He's twice did he have to grab him by the helmet and say, "God, stop!" But George,
from a guy that doesn't always keep his cool, having to do that,
yeah. But the thing is, I'm glad you said that, Dave, because the thing is, Broderick's learning. He's learning to keep his cool and hopefully he can impress George. There's going to be conversations. We know this because we've heard even last year, we've heard from different people, our source as well, that Mike Tomlin is not afraid to have those tough conversations and those hard conversations and those big brother conversations that are tough. And one's coming this week. George Pickens has an invitation to Mike Tomlin's office this week, and it's going to happen if it hasn't happened already.
Yeah, you guys talked about George Pickens, and you guys did a great job. I get so excited when players like Ben Skoranek get to make a play because they do all the dirty work. And I'm trying to think of a comp of someone in the past that has been kind of like this, at least for a season, a cult hero, and then finally gets to make a play. I can't think of a comp right now at the top of my head.
It's not exactly the same, but someone who would do with the dirty work, and then you'd really like when it would be there, they'd get their number called, was someone like a Matt Spaeth.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Let me give you maybe a Sean Morey,
Yeah.
Maybe a guy like that. Gosh, I'm going to get yelled at for this one. Even a Ryan Switzer or a Vance McDonald.
All right. Now, Ryan Switzer, you went too far.
Okay.
The reason why I'm not going to say Ryan Switzer is that he was Spaeth is a good example, I think, because Spaeth was a blocker. And then when Matt Spaeth got to catch a football, you're like, holy cow, he finally gets to catch it. It was good for Ben Skoranek. You guys talked about all that stuff.
DHB. There we go. Darius Hayward Bay.
There you go. Hayward Bay would be a good one as well. Or like a Miles Boykin, who comes in and maybe gets a catch. But here's what's interesting. On this week's Steelers preview, which again was on Tuesday because of the holiday, we did an over-under of Mike Williams targets. The dude had 0 again. I got to bring it up. I got to bring it up. I don't understand it. Even when Calvin Austin left the game, they didn't go to Mike Williams. And I don't know what's going on there. I wanted to bring it up because honestly, it's something where you're like, okay, the dude makes a catch. And I said it on the postgame show after the Commanders game-winning catch. If this is the only catch he makes in the black and gold, I'm fine with it. I never thought that was going to be reality. I never thought that he was never going to have another catch. But here we are going into week 14, and the guy hasn't had another catch. Dave, what's your take on Mike Williams?
Well, luckily, this game, they didn't have to have Mike Williams. So
he was out there. He didn't play. He just didn't get a target.
Yes. And honestly, I don't think they get that 25-yard touchdown to Freiermuth if they weren't overly paying attention to Mike Williams.
You could be right.
Mike Williams was the other one over there he was right in that. He was the zone beater spot, which is, what is it? 20 yards downfield on the sideline. That's right in between 15 and 20 yards. He was set up right over in there. And I think Russ was looking right at him, and the Bengals stepped, and he goes right back over to Muth.
Yeah.
And so it's not like he's not contributing. And yes, I would like to see him involved more. But to me, if you only unwrap Mike Williams when you absolutely have to have him, and he comes through with a game-winning touchdown, I'm okay if they didn't have to unwrap him this week. I really hope he's coming along. I have other people asking me this often, and I'm just like, there was some, how do I say it? It was implied that maybe part of his problem with the Jets is struggling to pick up the playbook and exactly where he's supposed to be and blah, blah, blah. But you can take that for whatever it's worth. Maybe it's taking him a little bit longer to get to be acclimated, but can still be used out there in some manner. We'll see. But I'm just happy that in a week that they once again, no targets for Mike Williams. You know what? The Steelers scored 44 points and won the game. It's okay for another week.
Yeah. Brian, what's your take on Mike Williams?
All right, I'm looking at the live chat here, and Charles Elliott said this, and I'm going to bring it up, even though it's not a super chat here. Williams is being used as a decoy. So that's really what he is. He's the big decoy, and that's a big deal. So I would love to see what kind of, they do it in baseball analytics, what kind of yardage they're getting when he's on the field, even though he's not getting a target. So is he helping make things happen just by being there? I don't know, but that seems like a possibility here. But Dave's exactly right. Jeff, you're exactly right. You're scoring 44 points. You're finding ways to win. The guy's going to get his number called again. But when you're getting the Skoronics and the Pruitts and everybody, Austin and all those guys over 20 yards, they're getting them all in the game. My gosh, you're getting contributions from everybody. And even if it's not that person, at least he's not on the sidelines, not doing anything. So he's got to be contributing somehow. We're just not seeing it on the stat sheet.
All right, let's go to the running game. The Steelers rushed for 110 yards total as a team, but they averaged 4.2 yards per carry. Najee Harris led the way, 16 carries, 75 yards, a 4.7-yard average, and he did have a touchdown with a long run of 20 yards. Cordero Patterson came in second, third, 3 carries, 16 yards, 5.3-yard average. Jaylen Warren, 3 for 9. Justin Fields has 1 carry for 7 yards, which sealed the win. He actually got the first down yardage before sliding. Good for him. And Russell Wilson, 3 carries for 3 yards and a total of 110 total team rushing yards. Guys, what do you think about the running game? Dave, we'll start with you.
The running game, it was completely different in the first half versus the second half, honestly, for both teams, if you look at it. But so the Steelers were getting more chunkier yards, it felt like, in the run game in the first half. In the second half, outside of Najee having that one big run of 20 yards, it wasn't quite as much. But that was also, bringing in the whole idea of attrition and things like that as the game got down. You can't ignore the dump off passes and the running backs' contributions in the passing game, which is ironic because that's exactly what the Steelers had been identifying with the Bengals when Mike Tomlin talked about it on Tuesday. So to me, that was almost like an extension of the run game. So it's not that the run game was dominant or anything of that nature. The biggest thing to me was when the Steelers got the ball, needing a first down, knowing that 3 running plays are likely coming, although I would have been okay if the Steelers passed on third down, because once they got that penalty called on them, that cost them 40 seconds of clock time that would have had Cincinnati with the ball for much longer because the clock stopped on the penalty, even though it was declined. But the running game got the first down. So it wasn't their best game running the football, but when you're throwing it that well, it just has to be a compliment.
All right. Marky D is distracting me in the live chat right now, but we'll go to super chats after the break. Brian, what's your take on the running game?
13 receptions, 74 yards from 3 running backs.
Yeah.
And Dave alluded to it. He actually didn't allude to it. He said it. You can't ignore the dump off passes. And I'm just saying that you've got to actually factor that in, because I thought the running game, they got over 100 yards. That's a big deal. Dave's right. They controlled it when they had to control it. It wasn't the same old Steelers having a punt after, giving up 30 seconds and punting towards the end of that game, because that game could have ended ugly if they didn't figure things out at the end. Then they bring in Justin Fields to get that crucial first down, which looked like a brilliant design. The running game was working for what it needed to be. But if you remember when we were talking about the lead up to playing the Baltimore Ravens, and we were forecasting that you're not going to see a lot of you probably aren't going to see a lot of rushes. You're probably going to want to see a lot of dump off passes to Najee and Jaylen Warren, and see a lot of that. I think in this game today, I think they used that as a part of the running game. I think it was designed to sacrifice less rushes, but do it that way and make them count for rushing yards. I mean, they don't count for rushing yards, but make them help you move the chains. And that's exactly what they did. So I don't care whether it is in the passing stat or a rushing stat. The running backs were effective all day long. So excellent.
Yeah, I'm just glad, like Dave brought up the scenario, I'm glad that they did not have to punt the ball back to the Cincinnati Bengals. They were able to get the first down yardage necessary, get in victory formation. That was the best. But I think this bleeds into discussion, because you guys did a great job talking about the running backs themselves. I think this is a great stopping point for the offensive line. The last point of emphasis on the offensive side of the ball in the first half of the podcast. The Steelers' offensive line did not have a good game against Cleveland. Anyone that watched the game knows that. You don't need Pro Football Focus, who makes up their numbers anyways from a lot of stuff, but still, you don't need to know that. You don't need them to tell you that they played a bad game. I thought this was a huge bounce back performance for the rookies up front. Isaac Seumalo didn't have his best game. It seemed like everyone else kind of picked him up, though. Dave, you're the offensive line guru. What'd you think?
I mean, Seumalo had the false start. Zach Frazier was not alone on one of his downfield calls, but one of them, it did seem like he was more alone. But that was a play that I think the timing, both of those were plays where the timing got disrupted. I'll be honest with you, Russell Wilson had time to throw the football.
Yep.
Russell Wilson had time to throw the football. Like I said, the 2 sacks were ones he basically chose to get sacked. I felt that the offensive line was doing a very nice job. 2 people I did not notice in the game, which generally is a good thing. With the Steelers throwing it, how many times did they throw it? 38 times compared to 26 rushes. But 2 people that I did not really notice, Dan Moore Jr. and Broderick Jones. Yeah. I thought, and when you're talking about pass blocking all that time, that's a good thing. And you know who else I didn't notice? Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson. Did not notice him in this game. Brian, you may take over.
And you know another one you didn't notice, Dave? Trey Hendrickson. That's what I was about to say. Hendrickson is I almost brought this
He's
up.
Really good. He is.
Jeff made a comment on Thursday on the preview, and he said, there's, besides somebody, I forget who he mentioned, there's not much to talk about on that Bengals defense. And I was about to break in and say Hendrickson. I didn't get a chance to, and then the show ended and I forgot to mention it. And I was thinking about that today, because Hendrickson is a game wrecker. He really is. He's dominant up there with sacks, and you hardly saw him today. And when you neutralize a guy like that, that's a huge deal. So I have to say that offensive line, really good. And you didn't notice Broderick Jones. The only time you notice Broderick Jones is when he's trying to talk George Pickens off the crazy ledge. Well, that's good.
Yeah. And Trey Hendrickson, for those that are curious, had 1 tackle
It was an
and
assist.
It was an assisted tackle and one quarterback hit. That's it.
Yeah.
No sacks, no tackles for losses, nothing. So yeah, they did neutralize him very well, and they were moving him around. So it wasn't just one-on-one the entire game. So kudos for that. All right, we're going to take a break. We've talked about the offense. When we come back after the break, we have some super chats to get to. We're going to talk about the defensive side of the ball and wrap things up. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, Steeler fans, welcome back. Second half of the show. Let's get some super chats out here. Steeler fan 69, he always provides a little humor with the dad jokes. Gives us $5. Said, why was God annoyed with Bob Dylan? He kept knocking on heaven's door. Very good. Thank you very much for the tip, Steeler fan 69. Here we have Monster 19. Welcome back. $4.99 tip. He said there's bungholes in the jungle. Well, that's all right by me. Yeah, and that's song lyrics altered. Bungle in the jungle. Is that what it's called? Isn't that Brian, help me out here. That's shoot.
Rumble in the jungle?
No, it's the guy plays a flute in the band.
Is that the White Stripes or something?
No, it's not. I'll think.
But real quick, I mean, because you mentioned song lyrics, and can I go back to a Steeler fan who had that Bob Dylan comment? Look, will you lay off Bob Dylan?
Jethro Tull in the live chat.
There it is.
Okay, yes.
Tull. Yes.
But Steeler fan, you've got to lay off Bob Dylan. He has no direction home. He's like a Rolling Stone.
Well, there it is. There it is. All right, here we go. We got Marky D. He goes off and gives us tips along the way. He gives us 10 dingo dollars. Said, sucked it. Sucked it. Bengals. Yeah, losers. The Bengals are like school on Saturdays, no class. Love it. Next one from Marky D. He said, who going to beat those Bengals? Answer is everyone. And then the last one here from Mark. He said 58 years and 0 Super Bowl wins. Maybe next year, Bungles, you losers.
That's a lot of dingo dollars.
He hates the Bengals. He and Brian Brown hate the Bengals.
For sure. All right, last one here. York Steel 3 gives us $9.99. Said on the defensive side, what is going on with the officiating? There were multiple false starts on Orlando Brown.
The touchdown was the worst defense, and they didn't call it.
Yeah. So Orlando Brown, let's talk. We can talk about officiating quickly before we go to the defense. Dave, I'll let you go first.
Okay, I missed it.
Officiating. We're talking about just the officiating.
Yeah, it was not good either way, and it almost seemed like they were doing various things to even things out. Let's just say this, because it was so funny. If you're following on social media, if you're following on X and follow the Steelers media that are there in the game, they so did not see what happened to George Pickens. They're like, oh, he tripped off the line and it was a pick. No, he didn't trip off the line. He had his head ripped down by the defender, who then went and picked off the ball and ran it back. That should have been called. They could have gone either way on the 4th and 1 on the false start, because I'm not sure exactly what they saw that they called, but I could have seen where they could have called it on the Steelers. But if you look before, who was it? Landon Roberts that came in?
Yeah.
On that. If you look at that, Keanu Benton points at the guard before Roberts comes in. The guard did something to try, and that's Karras, right? He's a veteran who you can do things and flick and try to move stuff with your hands or do various other things to try to draw the defense off that the officials often won't see because your whole body's not moving. And I think they actually saw him do it. So for people that thought that was a bad call, then they might have just, I didn't see it personally. I just saw Keanu Benton react to him before Roberts even came across. So, but still, if you want to argue that was a bad call that went in favor of the Steelers, I'm not going to say you're wrong, but there were just plenty of other things. A lot of the stuff with Joey Porter Jr., not every one of them was a penalty in my opinion, but there were enough of them that were. The one that I have the most problem with is the one that they called in the end zone. That ball was thrown so far out of the end of the end zone. How can, if you can call off pass interference because the quarterback's outside the pocket, why can't you call off the pass interference because the quarterback threw the ball out of the back of the end zone trying to throw it away?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Fair enough.
So it was not very consistent both ways, but I think it hurt the Steelers much more than the Bengals in this game.
Brian, any thoughts on the officiating?
Dave Schofield is speaking for Bryan Davis in this category. But I will say I am not going to go ahead and recognize that pick six at the beginning of the game. I will not. You can put it on a stat sheet. I'm taking it off a stat sheet. In the bad stats, there's no pick six that should have been called. There's absolutely, unless that's a situation that you're allowed to do that within 5 yards, and I still don't think you're allowed to. I don't think you're allowed to slam the guy down on his head. But we are in Ohio. I just think that the leader of the official crew today was Paula Dean. There was good old home cooking.
All right, let's go. Justin Goggins is $9.99. Said any injuries in this game? Feels like we've been lucky in that category the last 3 weeks. Not knock on wood, which I just did. Thank you for a tip again, Justin. Some people in the live chat have been helping you out here, but it's just Calvin Austin III. That was the only player mentioned. Mike Tomlin was asked about Najee Harris, and he said that he should be okay. That just bumps and bruises. The hope is that Alex Highsmith could potentially return next week at the home game against the Cleveland Browns. So we'll see. But yeah, that's the only injury of note. So, all right, let's talk about the defensive side of the football now, gentlemen. Let's talk about the secondary. I think that's where we have to start. The Bengals, Joe Burrow throws 28 of 38 for 309 yards, an 8.1 average, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 1 fumble. He was sacked 4 times. Now, we'll get to the pass rush in a second, so I'm not going to talk about quarterback hits. But receiving, Jamar Chase had 6 catches, 86 yards. T. Higgins, 5 for 69. Mike Gesicki, 5 for 53. I don't even know. Andre
Asovish.
There you sure. 3 for 35. Chase Brown, 3 for 30. Tanner Hudson, 4 for 28. They end up having 309 receiving yards in that group with an average of 11 yards. The Steelers, from a defensive standpoint, did not have a banner day in the back end. When you talk about pass defenses, the only defensive back to have 2, Dante Jackson's interception, and Cam Sutton had 2. That's it. So, guys, what did you think about the secondary? Everyone's going to pinpoint Joey Porter Jr., and I get it. The dude was flagged a ton in this game. Dave, we'll start with you.
Yeah, Joey Porter Jr. was flagged a ton, and so you can't take that away. I will tell you one thing about Joey Porter Jr. Man, oh man, is his tackling night and day different from last year.
Yes.
And we've talked about that multiple times. So I'll continue to say it. He is playing a more physical brand of football in his second year in the NFL. Are there times where it catches up to him when he's out there trying to defend some of the best wide receivers in the league? Yes, it can. So I also didn't think it was doing him any favors that for the most of the first half, the pass rush was not getting home, and Joe Burrow was getting extra time, which makes it a little bit harder for the defensive backs. The thing that bothered me, I'm going to get kind of specific here, and that was, my goodness, they gave up the 3rd and 21 play. They gave up another big play to the tight end in that drive to get them down there. They gave up a big play to set the Bengals up for their last touchdown, to let it happen a little bit faster than what we would like. A lot of that came with their zone coverage, and somebody said this early in the live chat. I'm sorry, I don't remember who said it. I wish I could give you credit. If you come back in and claim it was you, I won't remember if it was you or not. Their spacing got off in the zone defense. Their spacing on that 3rd and 21. You should not have that many guys that were just standing across the same line of the field, it seemed like. So something just was off with that throughout the game. And it could have just been the way the routes were coming and players were being passed off or whatnot. But specifically the zone coverage, they had a lot of breakdowns in this game. So that didn't help. But as Coach Tomlin said, you can't just go strictly one thing or the other against Joe Burrow, or he's going to eat it up. Yes, it was not good. Yes, they were going up against the number 1 passing offense in the NFL. So it needs to be better, but it's not like they were doing it against a crummy passing offense.
All right, Brian, what's your take on the pass defense?
Good enough to get out of the building. I will say that. If this was 1976, Joey Porter Jr. with that style of play would be a Hall of Famer. Seriously. I mean, you were allowed to do that stuff then. He's a physical guy. We talked about this earlier on. There was a super chat asking if George Pickens and Joey Porter Jr. are being picked on. No, but they are getting noticed because of that style of Joey Porter, because of his style of play. That's something that he's got a target on him right now, because it's like he works in that department store with red smocks. He's targeted. And the reason being is the fact that he's known to be a handsy guy. And so it depends on the crew. There's some crews that are going to let him get away with that even more. We've seen some plays where Joey got away with some stuff. It did not kill them this week, so that's a good thing. And I know you can say, but that's not going to work in January. That's not going to work down the line against great teams. But the entire defensive backfield was not amazing. But I like how it was brought up that this is the number one passing offense. But I thought that if Jamar Chase is kept under 100 yards, I think that's a pretty big deal. Gesicki's been going off a lot lately. Bengals tight ends have been feasting this year. And if Gesicki only had 5 catches for 50 some yards, that to me is something. But where the Bengals killed you in the past was Joe Mixon coming out of the backfield catching the ball. And Chase Brown had every opportunity to, and the Steelers found a way to take that away. He only had, I think, 3 catches for 30. And that's one of the reasons they did not lose this game, was because they were able to get off the field in certain situations, even though they gave up 31 points on defense, because I'm not counting the 7 points because the offense gave that up. So, I feel like they did enough. You got to get into shootouts in this league. And in 2024, there's going to be games that go back and forth, and good teams are going to give up close to 40 points in a game, but still win. So I'm taking it, but I hope this is one of the things that Mike Tomlin says, we've got a lot to clean up. I hope that the vacuum cleaner is looking towards the defensive backfield.
Go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say, I want to jump back in because, there was a lot of penalties. And if you add the penalty yardage of Joey Porter Jr. on the stuff, it's really bad. But it's not like he was with Jamar Chase all the time. He was also a lot of the times with T. Higgins. I thought that was part of what they would maybe switch up, because I thought, maybe you put Porter on Higgins and then you have somebody with help over the top on Chase. That's what, when my nephew was asking me about that on Thanksgiving, that's what I told him. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Steelers do a lot. But let me read you these numbers, okay? 140, 175, 114, and 146. That is the yardage, receiving yardage by T. Higgins against the Steelers in his 4 other games he's ever played against them. Over 100 yards, every one of them. 175, one game. What was he this game? 69 yards. So you did give up some of that with the penalties, but at the same time, it's kind of a trade-off.
So everyone's going to talk bad about the Steelers secondary, and they deserve a lot of criticism, but I just want to shine the light on someone who's actually been playing good football this season. Dave, you talked about on the offensive line players you didn't recognize. Have you noticed Dante Jackson much outside of when he's other than when he's intercepting passes this year? Mm-hmm. And the answer is no. Now, he's getting help. Like you mentioned, that's exactly what the Steelers want to do. And they're going to put him on the best corner or best receiver, and they're going to shade his way. The dude has 5 interceptions this year. That's tied for 3rd right now, and games are still being played in the NFL, I believe. So it's, in terms of that trade, I'm very happy with the return the Steelers got from the Carolina Panthers for Deontay Johnson. And I will say this as well. The Steelers have a knack this year of getting the ball back. The Bengals did not turn the ball over at a ridiculous clip coming into this game. I think they only had 10 turnovers in the entire season.
I'm pretty sure.
And the Steelers got them, and the Steelers got 3. And 2 strip sacks and the interception. I don't care how they get them. The Steelers are finding ways to get the ball back. And sometimes that's the secondary that's holding up so that the pass rush can get home and vice versa. So for me, yeah, there's a lot to nitpick. I'll let the coaches nitpick. For me, I'm going to look at this and say there was still some good kudos to Dante Jackson. I think he deserves some credit for having a good year. And Deshaun Elliott, I think Dave, you might have brought him up, or maybe it was Brian earlier.
He had some nice hits.
The guy's been a great pickup. So some of these pickups that they've had this offseason have really paid dividends, and when it matters most in these AFC North games. Let's talk about the Steelers pass rush. And Dave, I'll be really curious. I'll task you to see if you can find this with the numbers between the first half and the second half, because in the first half, the Steelers were not getting home. In the second half, they started to really heat up Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow was sacked 4 times, but how many quarterback hits did the Steelers have? Try 11. They had 11 quarterback hits. They were all around Joe Burrow. It was incredible. The sacks, in case you're curious, Cam Hayward gets 1. TJ Watt has 2. Nick Herbig has 1. The difference is Herbig and Watt's sacks, one of TJ's, were strip sacks, which were recovered. I think TJ's was recovered by Preston Smith, and Nick Herbig's was recovered by Peyton Wilson. No? Yes. Scoop it.
Yes. Honestly, hold on. I got to check on this to see if they changed the official scoring. I noticed this at halftime. Peyton Wilson recovered both.
Really?
Both strip sacks. The problem is he recovered, this is the official scoring on the Steelers media website. He recovered the one in the first half and then fumbled it back. And that's when Preston Smith got it. That's the official scoring right now.
I knew Preston Smith. I was like, I could have swore 91 came up with the football.
He did. But apparently they ruled that 41 had it and lost it.
All right. Interesting.
So we'll see if they change that or not.
All right. So what did you think about the pass rush, Dave? Go ahead.
Pass rush. What's crazy is that the quarterback hits weren't all that different from the first half to the second half. There was 5. You said it was 11 total, right?
Yep.
Because there were 6 in the second half. But the way they have it scored here is that includes the sacks. So the Steelers had 1 sack in the first half, 3 in the second, 6 quarterback hits. I felt like, let's just say this, not only did they technically have better numbers in the second half, it didn't feel like Joe Burrow had the opportunity to extend plays in the second half like he did in the first half. Like the touchdown to Jamar Chase was just so frustrating because it was right there and they had him for a sack. That was right after Cam Hayward blew up that run when the play was on the 1 yard line and pushed it back. Then they had a chance for that sack and they didn't finish it and it ended up as a touchdown. So I felt that was the difference in the second half, is they were a little bit better at not just getting home, but they were better at not letting Joe Burrow. I mean, especially once you start to get to him, guess what he's going to do? He's not going to look to extend it as long as he can and hold it for longer. And I think it paid off.
All right, Brian, thoughts on the pass rush?
Really good. I mean, I got to tell you, I'm not the best color man in the game for nothing, folks. They were great. And I felt like Joe Burrow was not his usual self today, and I think that was because of the pass rush. So that's why I really felt they were there. I thought, Cam Hayward, does he look like just a young man? He looks like you've just taken 6 years away from his tally, and he's back in his 20s. He's playing like that. So for those that were complaining that you gave an old man another contract in the summertime, don't. I mean, he's so valuable to this team there. TJ did TJ things. Herbig was brought up by Mike Tomlin in the postgame press conference, saying that when you're opposite TJ, you have that responsibility of having to go after it. And Herbig knows it. And Highsmith knows it when he's in there, is what Tomlin said. So I feel like this pass rush is a complete union, and I feel like they were a big part of everything here. They were a big part of that interception. They were a big part of everything in this game. And Joe Burrow might have the stats in this game, but he was not incredible Joe Burrow.
Oh, and TJ Watt talked about this in his post-game press conference where he said that the difference in the first half and the second half was in the first half, Burrow was able to step up in the pocket, run the ball on occasion, and find open receivers. He said in the second half, he had nowhere to go because the defensive front was holding that line firm and pushing that pocket back into his lap. And that's when the guys can come around from the edge. It works in concert. But I will say this, I always put like Cam Hayward on the winners list for a big game, which he'll find his way there on my winners list for tomorrow's podcast on Let's Ride. And people will say, and I'll bring up how he has a chip on his shoulder. And like, oh, yeah, Cam's chip on his shoulder. The dude has a folder in his phone of receipts where he has screenshotted people that have said, this guy's a bum, they shouldn't extend him, all this stuff. It's motivating him. It's motivating him to have one hell of a season. I mean, I don't know if he'll make like all pro, but he should definitely be up there in Pro Bowl voting. He's been phenomenal this year. The ageless wonder is what he looks like. And so, my gosh, it's just been phenomenal. What's up, Dave?
Because I want to say something, because of course it's game day, so I'm sporting my Cam Hayward jersey.
Absolutely.
He doesn't have any receipts for me because, like I said, Father Time will catch him eventually. I just don't think it's yet. That's what I was saying in the offseason, and it hasn't. And that's been fantastic. But my wife's watching the game with me. I mean, well, let's just say it. She's sitting on the couch while I'm watching the game. We'll say that. Go. I don't know how much she was watching the game, but I had to have her watch that replay of Cam Hayward's sack. Oh my goodness. He just drove back the guard, threw him to the side, and sacked the quarterback. I've not seen a defensive lineman dominate a play like that with just pure power and that wasn't speed. That wasn't like an Aaron Donald beating you with quickness for someone being that big. He just outpowered that guy. Now, granted, I'm not watching every NFL game. That was just a thing of beauty on that sack that he had. Also a thing of beauty on, coming through and blowing up that run when it was first and when they got it at the 1 yard line after the Joey Porter penalty. And remember, Dante Jackson does not get that interception if Cam Hayward doesn't deflect that ball. Yep. He was just he's worth so much more than the contract that he was willing to take from the Steelers. It's amazing. Love him.
My debate is, what was the better play from Cam? Was it the sack or was it the tackle for loss where he absolutely devoured Chase Brown? Like Chase Brown had some big runs against the defense. And then it's like, oh, welcome to the AFC North against the Steelers. Let me introduce you to Mr. Hayward. Captain Cam, you can call him. And it looked like, reminded me of the Stephon Tuitt hit when it was back in 2019 in San Francisco, where he doubled back and looked like a killer whale coming out of the water and devouring a guy. What a hit. Like, Cam's playing great.
Well, the only thing about that one, I mean, I love it. That was a phenomenal play. The only reason to me the sack is better is because we know what happened on the next play after Cam did that. Yeah. But I mean, my goodness, he took what was an obvious Bengals touchdown and in one play, then put it in doubt. Unfortunately, it ended up not being in doubt.
Yeah. All right. So it's been a good, and I do want to bring up the run defense because we have to. The Steelers gave up on the ground. Let me find the numbers here. We go. 93 yards. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's a pretty good day. Like, they kept him under 100. Chase Brown had 12 carries for 70 yards. Khalil Herbert had 1 for 14. Joe Burrow 2 for 9. But Chase Brown, 70 yards, 40 of that came on one run in the first half. At one point, it looked like the Steelers had forgotten how to stop the run. And they did kind of, I would say the score might have dictated what they do in terms of getting away from the run. But Brian, what was your take on the run defense?
They were solid. Chase Brown, I was worried at first. I almost felt like they were going to go ahead and give the Steelers fits with that running game, because I think Chase Brown is a good runner. I don't think he's Joe Mixon, but I think he's a very good runner. I think he works well, and I felt like the Steelers took him out of the game. I know you can't take away that 40-yard run, but you can, though, when you realize that with every other run, he's only making about 30 yards that entire time. Oh, then they kind of neutralized him after that one run. So he was not a factor in the second half. And it's not like this was a blowout. I mean, sure, they were up 17 at one point, but that wasn't for long. I just feel like they did their job against the run well and took that running game out of the equation to make this a passing game and let just the football gods take over once you make it a passing game.
Dave, anything to add about the run defense?
Yes. Okay. Quickly. Second half stats: 10 rushing yards, 5 carries, 2-yard average. It's not that they completely abandoned the run. They did try it a couple times, but the Steelers snuffed it out. Their longest run of the second half was 3 yards. Now, the Steelers were really selling out with everything and almost like they didn't care about the run, and it kind of burned them in the first half. But I think the Steelers knew what they needed to do to not worry about the run game of the Bengals. And that was, you needed to dictate the game in a way to take the run game away. And ultimately, that's what they were able to do, to take the lead by halftime and hold that lead and even extend it in the second half. And that's what did it as much as anything. I think they were kind of not focused on the run at all to start the game because the Bengals were so unbalanced with how well they are passing the ball versus running it. So the fact that when the Bengals did try it those few times in the second half, the Steelers completely snuffed it out, really went a long way to saying, all right, Bengals just have to throw the ball.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, let's do some final thoughts here on this game. This was a fun one. Thankfully, the Steelers come out on top. Brian, I'll let you go first.
Mike Tomlin said they've got a lot to clean up. Sure. And I love it. I love that they know they're not perfect. But when you have Russell Wilson as the quarterback, and when you're behind in this game 21-14, 14-7, when you're behind, there was no point in this game, and Jeff alluded to this at the beginning, no point in this game where I ever thought that this is a problem, because I just feel like the offense is different right now. But when I look at this whole thing, you had to go ahead and win 2 out of 3 after the bye. They've won 3 out of the 4 after the bye, and a big one on the road against Cincinnati. I know they've done well, only 4 losses in the last 25 against Cincinnati, but with a Joe Burrow team, you're going to, it's a much tougher place to play. So I will say right now that this bodes well for this team. The Bengals have to win out. The Steelers have to lose out because the magic number is 1 for the Bengals to win the division. The Browns cannot win the division now because their magic number over the Steelers it's over. I mean, there's no way they could catch up. You don't expect the Steelers to lose out, but the Bengals are all but eliminated from divisional play. And this probably really hurts the Bengals' chances of even making the playoffs whatsoever. So you accomplished a lot today, but the biggest thing you had to accomplish was know that you could go into a hostile environment, as I take Mike Tomlin's words, go there and score a whole heck of a lot of points to win. And even though your defense is giving up points in this game like they have, you know that you can go ahead and counteract anything a Joe Burrow does, one of the best in the business right now, then you're in good shape. 9-3 taste really good right now, fellas.
All right, Dave, final thoughts.
Well, just to say that, to follow up on with Brian, the Bengals absolutely would have to win out just to get to 9-8. So they are 1 loss away from a losing record. Now, I'm going to try to get through my closing thoughts. If not, Jeff might have to finish them up for me.
Sure.
It's been a rough 24 hours. A lot of you all know, because you're part of our Steelers family, that Big Brosco and I lost our mom. It was 9 weeks ago yesterday. And yesterday we lost my big sister. So I really needed a win today. Thank you, Steelers.
Well said. For Dave, it's tough. It's difficult, and I'm glad you joined the post-game show, because hopefully
I needed some joy in my life, and this was a joyous show.
Yeah. And I hope that for the hour you were able to take your mind off of everything, because I know you have a lot on your mind, and our thoughts and prayers. And for some people, they say that means nothing. In my life, it means something. So
we love you.
Yeah, absolutely. Love you, man. And we wish you nothing but the best. And we'll be there for you no matter what you need. And thankfully, like you said, the Steelers delivered a victory for you and for your family. And I know that may seem trivial and minute in the grand scheme of life, but in some instances, that's all we need. So kudos. Dave, our condolences go to you and yours. For me, if you want my final thoughts, you can check out Let's Ride tomorrow, my Winners and Losers podcast. I'll be spouting off about everything. You can find out all of our content, not just the Let's Ride podcast, but Brian's Here We Go show with Coach KT Smith and Bad Language, Dave's Pittsburgh Standard Time podcast, which can only be found on the podcast side. So if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you check us out wherever you get your podcast by searching Steelers or Steel Curtain Network and steelcurtainnetwork.com. Give that website a check. In the meantime, Steelers win 9-3. Let the good times roll. Make sure you check us out. We'll see you next week after another post-game show. Take it easy, everyone.
Steel Curtain Network. Get it.
Everybody else gets a little tight.